So we've talked in recent weeks about the insane amount of money that two candidates are spending in this Democratic primary, Tom Steyer, and to a much greater extent recently, Mike Bloomberg is just spending tons together. I believe it is over $200 million so far in this cycle, which is crazy. And you might have gotten some phone calls from a campaign worker for Mike Bloomberg. And you might think, well, he's got a lot of volunteers considering he just entered this race. That might not actually be what it is. There was a really interesting report by John Washington, The Intercept, and here is what he found. Former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg used prison labor to make campaign calls. Through a third-party vendor, the Mike Bloomberg 2020 campaign contracted New Jersey-based call center Procom, which runs call centers in New Jersey and Oklahoma. Two of the call centers in Oklahoma are operated out of state prisons. In at least one of the two prisons, incarcerated people were contracted to make calls on behalf of the campaign. The people were required to end their calls by disclosing that the calls were paid for by the campaign, but they did not disclose that they were calling from behind bars. So none of this, by the way, is illegal, but it is interesting when you have to sort of manufacture a popular base of support. It works in mysterious ways. And joining us now to break down this and other news, progressive activist Jordan Newell, welcome back to the show.
John, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. So Bloomberg's campaign strategy kind of took an interesting turn there.
Yeah, so this reflects first like just billionaires and rich people in general, their callous disregard for incarcerated people. They're seen as subhuman. They're seen as not worthy of being paid the same as you or I for equal work. Their labor is exploited. This happens with multinational corporations and huge companies all over. Like this isn't just a campaign thing, although that is why we're talking about it. But like we need to, as we talk about this, we need to understand this happens all the time and their labor is always exploited and we need to be mindful of that. We should push back against that. So, but on Bloomberg itself, it shows that his campaign has zero like altruistic or authentic momentum. He's astroturfing his campaign, and as a result, he's using and exploiting prison labor. I don't believe that they just didn't know. I think it's just that they got caught, and they should have been more careful, and they should have been more deliberative in how they vetted their clients or their subcontractors.
So Bloomberg has put out a statement about this, and we're gonna turn to that in 1 second. But I want to stay on the point that you were making there, because I remember something that happened earlier this year, and I found an issue that when you speak out in support of it, unites people across the spectrum against you, and that is, I think that people are being too hard on prisoners, or prisoners should get this right or privilege. People don't like that. And it was early this year that Bernie Sanders said that he believes that people who are in prison should be allowed to vote, not just when they leave prison, but while they're in prison. And lots of people hate that position. But you bring up a good point. I mean, they are exploited. And the issue with this is not that people in prison are working. If they want to use some of their time to make money, they should be able to. But that they're generally paid virtually nothing. They have no real rights or say or anything like that. I mean, that's the real issue. And especially when it's being used to sort of prop up the campaign of a guy whose positions on criminal justice in particular have been questionable at best over the past couple of decades. It just seems, I think, to really put a spotlight on an issue that very rarely is talked about.
Totally. I mean, Bloomberg was the stop and frisk guy.
Exactly.
Broken windows policing and tactics like stop and frisk have put a ton of people in prison or jail and left people with criminal records that will haunt them forever. This guy is very aggressive on criminal justice and criminal policy. And now is exploiting their labor for personal gain. This is not someone that we should welcome into the fray in the Democratic Party as the party shifts left and as we have a progressive wave, just sweeping the nation. This is a guy who's seeking to undermine all that effort on a self-aggrandizing and self-funded campaign that ultimately serves to protect his and other billionaires and billionaires' wealth.
And man, when I think about, oh God, the money, how that could have been spent. But like I said, he did put out a statement. So here's Mike Bloomberg saying, earlier today, a news outlet reported that prison workers were being used by a subcontractor to make telephone calls on behalf of my campaign. I'm not attacking the news. The story was fundamentally accurate. We only learned about this when the reporter called us. But as soon as we discovered which vendor subcontractor had done this, we immediately ended our relationship with the company and the people who hired them. Jordan, what do you think about that explanation?
Well, I mean, he's just trying to save face. It was a quick, fleeting apology, and they're hoping everyone moves on. But nowhere in that was it, hey, these people should be treated better. Hey, these people should make more than $20 an hour. Yeah. Or so I'm sorry, $20 a month. This is not, he wasn't saying like, hey, he doesn't feel sympathy for the people. He's just saying, we got caught, we're sorry, we're moving on. It would have been a welcome apology if it was like, hey, and I'm actually going to go a step further, and I'm going to advocate for people in prison whose labor is being exploited, to help them develop new skills and also re-enter society, because recidivism is a huge problem, and he's doing nothing for that.
Yeah, in a different primary, it would be a great opportunity for someone to bring up these issues on the debate stage and question him about that. But of course, he's not going to be on the debate stage because he's not really seriously pursuing the nomination. He doesn't care about actually qualifying. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.